In fact, something that they put in place where I hope it's a waste of time and money. Because I hope 30 years from that point in time, they're upset that they never had their thing tested. Well, that would be great. But if something comes along where it is tested, we want a structure that will carry out the ultimate goal of letting the client come out of the other side of this mess at least modestly better than they otherwise would have come out of this mess. That's the goal. How do we get there? There are a number of techniques we look at. On a ladder, they would be arranged in ascending order of efficacy, a good, better, best fashion. We look at simple gift giving. We look at using exemptions under state law, going up the ladder. We look at different types of annuities. We look at limited partnerships and going up the ladder more. We look at domestic trusts. We look at foreign trusts. We might look at foreign foundations. We might look at even expatriation planning, which is something that a number of years ago especially, it was kind of the sexy topic of the day.
Let's get to the situation where I am very concerned, and we're talking now about before the fact. We're not talking about when the lawsuit's already shown up and my name's on it.
Right.
We're talking about, of course, it could happen. I mean, this is before the fact. We know it could happen, but there's been no letters received in the mail
right.
and nasty phone calls.
Right.
Certainly no lawsuit, no complaint with the insurance commissioner or the NASD. So before the fact, let's say I really want to do this thing right. And now again, my income consists largely of commissions, very hefty commissions, and the expectancy of hefty commissions as long as I'm in business. And what I've been able to sock aside, which I've put into various possible investments. I'm not what I call a wealthy man or wealthy woman, but I do have a pretty darn good income and the expectancy of more. Mm-hmm. So I come in your office or someone else's office who's, I might say, not quite at your level, but I'm asking for some help. I preach this in my practice to my clients. Something could happen to you. We need life insurance and so forth, annuities. What can you do for me, Barry? And if I might ask, what might it cost me?
Well, it's not cheap, but I'll tell you what's expensive, not doing this. That could be what's expensive. Fees, I would say, typically run from $7,500 to $30,000 to $40,000, depending what is done. Again, expensive. But it's the setup cost. It's a one-shot cost at the front end to put in place a structure that is as good as long as it's maintained. We first got into this work in '87, and today I would say 95% of the more than 1,000 foreign offshore structures we've created are still in place. A lot of people already have received, let's say, 20 years of protection under those structures. It's a heavier cost at the start to maintain it. In terms of what does it cost, one of the more expensive structures might cost between $2,500 and $4,000 to $5,000 a year to maintain, depending how active it is, let's say. That's a pretty cheap insurance premium, I think.
So what do I get that allows me to sleep at night?
Well, it depends what we do for you. And what we do for you depends on really our discussion, because my job is to educate you on what your options are, what the pros and cons are, and let you make an educated decision. I'm not going to tell you what we're going to do. I'll tell you what we can do and the different ways we can go. And once you have that basic education, then we design a plan together. I've had people, Dick, with very large estates come in and end up doing anywhere from no planning to very basic planning. I've had people with modest estates come in and they want to go for the big guns for whatever their reasons happen to be. It might be they're expecting an inheritance. It might be that they're new in their career and they know that they can feed this structure over time, so they might as well have it in place today so that by the time the estate has grown a certain percentage and they've fed it over time, if something happens, it's old and cold, because timing is important here. Again, we're back to we don't want to be doing this in the face of the problem. What I educate you on, we might dispose of some of the subjects early on, but typically it's the difference between domestic trust planning and foreign trust planning. In the last 10 years, roughly, we've had a number of states enact legislation that deals specifically with trusts set up for asset protection. And it's good legislation. It's legislation that says you can do that here in our state. Nevada, for example, Alaska, for example, Delaware, Rhode Island, Utah, Oklahoma has a version of something like this. But in these states, they're will be law that we refer to as asset protection trust legislation. And what that means is these different states, to different extents, will say, because they're all different, to different extents, they'll say, or they'll address the question of when and under what circumstances can somebody get inside a trust. Once it's been set up, when and under what circumstances can it be pierced, can it be invaded? And these states have addressed these questions specifically in a good fashion, in a favorable fashion, favorable to somebody who's creating a trust like this. Now, the first legislation of its kind that did this sort of thing was actually a jurisdiction in the South Pacific by the name of the Cook Islands. And my then law partner and I had the privilege and pleasure of drafting the first asset protection trust legislation in the world that was enacted by the Parliament of the Cook Islands. We were two of the co-authors out of three, the third being a New Zealand barrister with whom we still work today, all these years later, and he is the key principal in the trust company that we use in the Cook Islands. So one important point, and then I'll wrap up this line of speaking, is that importantly to clients, the relationships that we have are not new. Everybody has been on this team since, well, really no later than 1989.
Then do I put my assets in a trust and locate that trust in that foreign country? Sounds like something where I'm giving up control of my money. And although it might be a good thing in case I'm sued, is it really that simple? Do I have to give away my property?
Depends how we structure it. We have a continuum here, and there are very few blacks and whites in the law. Most things are somewhere in between. And this is no different. So yes, I could design a structure, Dick, that left you with little to no benefit or control, but as a consequence was as protective as you could possibly get. Now, there's a trade-off because most people will say, well, I don't need a 10 of control. I mean, I'd like that, but I'm happy with an 8 or a 9 of control on that 1 to 10 continuum. So if I'm able to retain elements of benefit and control and just lose a little bit of ultimate protection, then that's a trade-off I'm willing to make. Most clients will think that way. We'll speak in those terms together. And therefore, we can give them a heck of a lot more protection than they can get onshore, and we can give them a heck of a lot more continued benefit and continued control without giving up a whole lot of ultimate protection. It's not a point-for-point trade-off on those competing continuums of, on the one hand, benefit and control, and on the other hand, protection.
Okay, so the less control I have over my own property, the more protection I get.
As a principle, I refer to that as the distance concept. The more distance you put between the stuff and you, the more protection.
And the more control I have, the less protection, the less control, the more protection. And so when people come to visit with you about their affairs,
right,
whether it's the insurance agents that are listening or maybe even their clients who have a different set of circumstances.
Absolutely.
Your discussion with them is how you balance the control and the protection to make it an arrangement suitable. And I trust you've come up with some very clever approaches, which I won't get into today, to layer on the different control that you want and layer on the different amounts of protection you want. And that's what we're really using your advice for. And then a set of documents is prepared to accomplish that. And it might involve having a trust and maybe combined with your corporation or partnership arrangements that you have in your own practice.
Depending on how we approach this, it's very common to have the trust in the planning structure coupled with, say, a limited partnership. Under the state law here, one of the 50 states, will use for a limited partnership held 1% by the client as the general partner, 99% by the trust as the limited partner. So the limited partnership might be the holding vehicle for the assets. So in other words, when you go to visit your money in the Cook Islands, you're really going to visit your limited partnership interest in the Cook Islands because the money